Well, it is officially wedding season. And of all of the weddings that could have brought the media to their knees, I did not think it would be Cole Kmet's wedding that brought the media to your
I didn't
knees.
even
Did
see
you
this.
see this? Cole Kmet got married last week, and a picture went viral because it was tweeted out. Two very special guests were at Cole Kmet's wedding, Taylor and Travis Kelce. So so where it said
okay.
on the place setting, it just said Taylor and Travis Kelce, like they would say if you're married, you know,
Oh, right, yeah.
your
There's
wife's
a
name and then
yeah.
your name. So Lauren and Paul Hespin, like, you know what I mean? Like there would be, so the internet was abuzz. Did Taylor and Travis secretly get married? I don't think so. I think that was probably just
anonymity.
There's no
That was
need
for
to write out
anonymity.
Taylor Swift fully. I think everyone knows the Taylor we're talking about. Also really cool that Cole Kmet and Travis are that close to where Taylor actually went to the wedding. That's pretty wild. Caleb was there, so
Tight
now
ends stick together.
Yeah, so now hopefully Caleb has met Taylor Swift as well, and now we can get some of that good luck rubbing off, and QB1 fired up, ready for the season. So there's a lot of wedding talk going around, and I didn't realize it would be Cole Kmet's that might have actually broke the internet.
That would be the one.
As of right now, no official word on if Travis and Taylor are married, but we did learn someone else is married, Dan.
We did. That's where I thought you were going with this one.
I know. I knew I'd throw you a curveball.
Aaron Rodgers showing up with a wedding ring on multiple occasions, and people picking up on that. And then he, of course, addressed that today when he talked with the media for the first time as the new member of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So definitely going to talk about Aaron Rodgers signing, talk about all of that news, a few other bits and pieces, and then dive into the top 5 running backs in the NFL and the bottom 5 running backs in the NFL. That's, of course, among starting NFL running backs. So ranking 32 running backs, but just giving our top and bottom there in terms of the list. But yeah, let's just start with the Aaron Rodgers news, Mark. Yeah, of course, that was a little bit, that was actually on the nose for Aaron Rodgers in terms of just getting married and being like, oh, what? You noticed I was married? Yeah, it's no big deal. Yeah, I'm married. Like, okay, great. And I think it's totally fine to have anonymity where you want it and to have your own personal life. But at the same time, don't act surprised or coy about the fact that, you're a high profile individual.
Yeah.
Who just signed to be quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and you're showing up married. Yeah, people are going to ask questions, man. Like, that's just how that works.
It's funny. I actually thought the Pittsburgh Reporter handled it really well. They just said, "Hey,
they know
is that a wedding ring on your finger?" And Aaron just like, "Yep." And the reporters went, "Congratulations!" And Aaron was like, "Oh, thank you." And it kind of like broke
that actually
ice.
Probably surprised him a little bit.
Yeah, like a good way to interact on that. And then didn't ask really any like follow up. But one of the things we had been hearing, but we didn't really talk about it. But everyone kind of was kind of hovering around the fact that it's like Aaron and the Steelers have an agreement, but yet Aaron has some personal things he's trying to take care of, and didn't want to just like sign it. He wanted to just like take care of his life, and then what kind of promised Pittsburgh to be ready. And I think a lot of reporters, I was seeing Ian Rappaport and some other guys talking about like, they thought it might've been like a death in the family or someone was ill. Like, but now it appears it's just, he got married and wanted to kind of have the start to his married life, not be interfered with the media of football. And I think that's now kind of what we're assuming was this personal matter.
That could be. I could also. I mean, there's probably a million different reasons. Like one of them could be he got married to get this individual on his health insurance because that's the person that was going through a health situation in their life. Like that could be. I mean, I don't know.
I know he's wealthy enough though. If he cared about that person, he'll just write them a check and cover their medical.
That's very true.
But I like where you're going with that. I like where you're going. I'm just thinking outside the box.
Especially for a guy as
healthcare in this country, yikes!
An enigma as Aaron Rodgers, I could see there's probably a million reasons that we don't even know about. But him signing obviously was big news. since we last spoke. And so let's just dive into that real quick. Signed the 1 year, $10 million guaranteed contract. I believe it's $13 million really in a base salary. And then he can get up to $20 million in incentives. So obviously a very team friendly deal. I thought it was a really good deal in terms of both sides kind of getting what they want out of that contract. Aaron wanting to play for a team that was stable enough. And in terms of the suitors, the list was short. And, it was apparent that the Vikings weren't going to kick the tires because they want to see things through with JJ McCarthy. The Rams weren't going to do this deal because Matt Stafford realistically was never on the market, although it was kind of shopped that he was. And so at the end of the day, the only plausible option for Aaron Rodgers was the Pittsburgh Steelers, unless you want to talk about New Orleans or the Giants, both of which have their situations in play as well. So, look, from my perspective, I think people are curious, where I stand on this. We've talked about it plenty, but now that it's a done deal, I am just hashtag embrace the chaos right now. Like that's really, I'm just going to go into the season hoping for the best, embracing this, and going into it knowing that there's going to be, those eye roller press conferences throughout the season. There's going to be weeks where he doesn't play well and doesn't look, like the Aaron Rodgers that we had seen before his tenure with the New York Jets. So I'm just kind of embracing this whole thing. I don't think personally that the ceiling has been raised that significantly, although I think now that they could be in play for a 10-11 win season at the peak, whereas with Mason Rudolph and, even a Will Howard, they were probably looking at a 9-win season at their ceiling. So this does, make things in play for at least maybe a higher wild card spot. But I don't think too much changes for Pittsburgh here with this. And to be honest, Mark, I think this is the best quarterback play that you can forecast going into a season that they've had since probably going into the 2020 year with Ben.
Yeah.
So I even think the 2021 season, Ben, this is better than that. And certainly better than any Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky era. And probably better than the Justin Fields, Russell Wilson that we got last year. So do you see it that way? Do you think that the Steelers got an upgrade from what they had last year? Or do you see it kind of as a wash or even a, regression?
I think it's an upgrade. Listen, I was spending some time today in prep for the show. Aaron's numbers last year really weren't as bad as we thought. They're bad for Aaron Rodgers' numbers, but remember, Aaron Rodgers' numbers are top 10 quarterback of all time. So,
especially the final 7 games of the year, he really played well.
He turned it on. He did turn it on. And I think, listen, what I think is so freaky about how this all shakes out is now we're learning that, hey, remember there was this kind of like week-long rumors of like maybe the Rams and Stafford are trying to maybe make a trade, and then those were ended really quickly when they gave Stafford the new deal. And when you look back on it now, and we have a lot of people we trust saying Aaron reached out to McVay and the Rams, and his team did, and the Steelers reached out to the Rams about Stafford because Stafford was their kind of first choice. And then the reports were saying that Justin Fields was their second choice, but they didn't want to get into a bidding war. And the Jets deal
I think it was flipped. I think they had Justin as the top choice.
Okay. Yeah. And listen, here's the thing. I give the Steelers credit. If they had a number they weren't willing to go higher than for Justin Fields and they stuck to that, good for them, right? Like you don't want to overspend in it become a disaster. I think they had a number, and the Jets outbid them, and they said, listen, if you want to go for that number, here's our offer and stay with us. And to Justin's credit, I don't blame him for taking the money and taking the fresh start with the Jets. But so I think there's a lot to me that's interesting about how everyone sees the world. And so if you're Aaron Rodgers, I think it's humbling, and I think it's probably a really good thing for him mentally to know, listen, my standing in the league right now is this was the opening and I was the third choice in this opening. And I also thought a couple days ago, there's actually a Steelers fan at the TV station, a young guy. He's in our promotions department, Kenny, nice kid. And he was asking about Aaron Rodgers. And I told him, I was like, I think he'll sign for probably like 1 year, 20 million with incentives to reach, close to like 25 or 30. So for me, seeing that the deal is really 1 year, 10 million, kind of 1 year, 13 million, and there's the incentives to get to 20 or like win the Super Bowl, like I think it's a great money deal for Pittsburgh, as we're going to talk about that. Pittsburgh's got some negotiating they need to do here now with the face of their franchise. That all to me, I think is actually plays well into I think this is going to go better than we think. You have a humbled Aaron Rodgers. You have a ultra focused Aaron Rodgers, and you have an Aaron Rodgers who I think the biggest criticism for Aaron over the last 5 years, besides the health year, was that he was distracted. He was distracted by dating celebrities and the kind of weirdness of his personal life. And then he was distracted by the vaccine and how him, like a lot of people, and I don't blame him for this, his eyes were opened in 2020, 2021 to a lot of Americans of like, what is going on in our system? What's going on in our country? We're being lied to. You know what I mean? Like now we're learning things that were told to us as fact. It's like 4 years later, it's like, well, maybe that's not the truth. And I think I don't blame him for that, but he was so public about it. And when you're trying to be a franchise quarterback and win games in NFL, to be distracted in that way, it's one thing for average Joe to get distracted and put, and to spend too much time online.
The right guard is going out saying stuff like nobody cares.
Yeah, it's like, okay, his like assignments at work are a lot easier than being the franchise quarterback. And the Pat McAfee stuff, I mean, I just think there's a lot of distractions. I think this is the most focused Aaron Rodgers we've had since his last MVP year, kind of like right at the start of COVID. And so what does that mean? I think I agree with you. I think it means that Pittsburgh should look at this as like, hey, we have a real chance if injuries break our way and we stay healthy, there's a chance this Pittsburgh Steelers team could be playing in the second round of the playoffs. You know what I mean? And when you get to that point, maybe, who knows, luck is in your favor, and Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf, if they're healthy and other teams are beat up, that's a really interesting team with Mike Tomlin. I also think worst case scenario, if I'm a Steelers fan, and I told this to Kenny and I'm telling it to you now, worst case scenario is what? It's a total disaster. And then you would hope your franchise says to Mike Tomlin and Aaron, now's the time for us to just completely reset, right? And then you go into the first rebuild that Pittsburgh's had in 20 years, and you just get to say, hey, we're gonna it's time for us to completely maybe upend this thing. But I don't think that's gonna happen. And
I don't know. I kind of think the worst case scenario would be to not be bad enough to make it clear and have Aaron just play subpar football all season long. They stick with him. You get 8 wins. You're picking 13th next year, and you didn't play well. You had your first losing season, still didn't get that playoff win, and you're not picking high enough in the draft. Now, granted, even if they're 13th or 14th, they'll still be able to then move up with all the extra capital they have. So I guess there's that.
And they have, listen, I do think that I agree with you. Yeah, you don't want to be like mired in the mediocrity, but I think Pittsburgh at that point, yeah, I don't know what that's way out of here. We don't need to theorize. Let's get through the season. But I think, what I'm trying to say is, like, I think there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Sure, there's not much. There's not risk involved with what is happening right now.
Now I know Tomlin just re-signed a deal, but like, at some point maybe you could say, hey, Mike and Aaron, like, if this goes that badly, like, we're gonna clean house and we're gonna rebuild. Who knows? I think I lean more towards you right now. I look at Pittsburgh as a wild card team with higher upside than they certainly had last year.
Yeah. No, I think the passing game is going to be improved greatly. And now how it's going to manifest is going to be a lot different. I'm very curious to see how he's going to fit. The one downside I see to this is I really just wanted Arthur Smith to be able to just run his offense the way he wants to run his offense, because we've seen it be successful in the past when he has the proper infrastructure in place, like he had in Tennessee. Obviously, he had a lot of young players in Atlanta, so I don't totally fault him for that, and he had no quarterback play. He would have preferred Justin Fields last year. I would have liked to see how that progressed as the year went on.
Yeah.
He had to completely change how he called plays based around Russell Wilson. How is Aaron Rodgers going to fit with an outside zone, heavy play action type of offense when he's not, he's not the mobile guy that he used to be? But I think the middle of the field is going to be in play, which is something that the Steelers have not had since 2020. They don't throw to the middle of the field. So I think that's going to be there. And obviously the cerebral aspect of the game is something they've missed for a very long time from that position that Aaron Rodgers is going to bring to the table. So that much is exciting. I do want to see kind of how that plays out. And yeah, to your point, there's just not a whole lot of risk involved here. I think that there's a lot of upside that could be unleashed. But it's going to be tempered for sure, because it's just, he's not going to play at an MVP level, almost certainly.
Yeah.
And so, you get with it what you get.
We'll have to do I'll have to update the stats, but remember a year ago I was talking about how Aaron, like it's like a really important year because he was like 40 touchdowns away from passing like Favre, and like Aaron's really close, and
he's incentivized.
And I totally think there's a chance. And now again, I don't know how his long-term health holds up, but I think there's a chance early in the season you see an Aaron Rodgers that's playing at like a 2021 Aaron Rodgers pace, 2020 Aaron Rodgers pace. Does that last in December and January? I don't know. But I also think, Dan, it just makes the season as a fan of football more exciting. I get Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers against the NFC North. So I get a Vikings game, I get a Packers game, I get a Bears game, and you get to open the season against the Jets and Justin Fields. I think it's great for the storylines. I think it's great for selling tickets and selling those Pittsburgh Steelers games. And if they can get TJ Watt signed, I do think there's a lot of upside in a short window here for the Steelers for this year.
Yeah, they will be exciting for sure. And the button I'll put on that discussion with Aaron Rodgers to complement what you were saying earlier is he does kind of get a physical, mental, and just career reset here in Pittsburgh, because he probably took the Jets job for a lot of reasons, namely one being he's the guy. He owns the Jets. He didn't choose to go there for the coaching staff.
No, he brought in his guys.
He chose to go to Pittsburgh because of Mike Tomlin.
There's no Lazard. There's no all of the, what's the name? The offensive
Randall Cobb.
There's no Nathan. What was the head coach of the Broncos?
Well, Nathaniel Hackett.
Nathaniel Hackett. Sure. Like there's none of those guys.
Right. He's coming here, and I think he chose this place for the infrastructure that they have already in place. He went to a disaster organization thinking that he could play Superman and resurrect them and be the dude. I think now he's going to come to Pittsburgh and saying, you know what, I tried that. Let me just go back. Maybe this will help me unleash and kind of resurrect my legacy in football a little bit. And come here and just kind of play football and not be the distraction. I hope that's what it is. That'd be great. That'd be great if he can play fully distraction-free football and just kind of get down to business and get things done. What you said about TJ Watt, we have a couple contract disputes. TJ is holding out from minicamp, which mandatory minicamp here, which is to be expected. It's what players do when they're trying to get a deal done going into the last year of their current contract. TJ wants to be paid. I've been pounding the table for all off season. I wanted them to get this done the day after the Super Bowl, like find a way to just get this out of the way and not have distractions, but they're still in this stalemate right now. I am under no worry currently that this isn't going to get done. I know that they'll have this contract figured out and they'll get it done. But, in the meantime, they saw Max Crosby get a big deal. Then they saw Myles Garrett get an even bigger deal, 4-year, $160 million deal. So now $40 million per is on the table. And I imagine that even if it's not the 4 years that TJ Watt may be looking for, although I think he probably is, he's looking for anywhere in that $40 million per category, and the Steelers certainly can afford it. And so I think TJ Watt knows that. And so holding out and kind of waiting for this deal to get done. But yeah, you don't want this stuff lingering well into the season. It's a good thing that TJ doesn't need to be there. I mean, if there's a guy that doesn't need minicamp, it's Cam Hayward, it's TJ Watt, but definitely not a distraction you want lingering for too long there in Pittsburgh.
Definitely. Yeah, they got to just get it done, or trade him. Like, just make the move. I don't think they should trade him. I think, again, he's just one of those guys. Let him retire with your franchise, like all-time Steelers great. And so pay him. Figure out what it's. I guarantee it's arguing over years, not dollars, because the Steelers will probably want to go 1 year less than what he wants. But if you front load the contract,
or the guarantees, Myles Garrett got $123.5 million guaranteed. The Steelers just don't guarantee that much money very often. So that's probably the guaranteed money might be the sticking point currently.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I agree with you. I think they'll get it done. They just got to get it done.
Elsewhere in the AFC North, Bengals rookie defensive lineman / edge Shamar Stewart hasn't signed his rookie deal yet, and they are going into mandatory minicamp as well. And he, talked pretty candidly with the media there about how, frustrated he is and that he wants to be out there, but that they're not able to get the deal done. And then obviously discussed Trey Hendrickson and how he believes that he deserves. And, he was going, I don't know, man, you get 17 sacks a season for several years in a row. I would think if you're the GM and owner of that team, you'd want to lock that guy down. But apparently they do business differently here. That's quite a statement. And obviously I'm paraphrasing, but I think I captured the gist of what he had to say. That's pretty damning for a rookie coming in to say something like that about the regime. This is just the Bengals being the Bengals yet again. And it really showcases how some teams just can't get out of their own way when it comes to fostering talent and retaining and also being a good haven. What does this say about any future prospect in free agency? They're just not going to want to come to your team, even if Joe Burrow is there. It's a tough sell when you see that they do business this way.
I will say, I think, I compare it to everyone being like, oh, Caleb didn't want to play for the Bears. Listen, there's organizations that still at least take care of players. The Bears are a franchise that pays players and has handed out big contracts and brings in big free agents like the Khalil Mack deal and things like that. So I for the rookie to be saying that, he must, and his agent must feel very confident that they're just saying what everyone else knows already, and they're going to be very blunt about it. And listen, the Bengals, if they want this to stop, they got a lot to prove. They have got a lot of years of work to prove to say, hey, no, we're actually going to change this narrative. And they have an opportunity to do it with Trey Hendrickson and with him, with the rookie. Just get them both sides, get it done, find a way, and go play football. And you have a really solid football team in a really competitive, tough division. You need these guys to be actually there and ready to go.
Yeah, it's just to stop the distractions. It seems like it's easy at this point, but they keep making things difficult.
Yeah.
The Green Bay Packers released Jair Alexander. He's been kind of a topic of conversation the last couple of years because he's, made statements. He's had, conduct detrimental to the team, which he was sat for a game. A lot of talk around Jair Alexander. The talent is there, Mark. I mean, he's still one of the better cornerbacks in the league, I think.
He's just missed 20 games the last 2 years. 10 games 2 years ago, 10 games last year. That's from everything that I'm hearing and reading about that, and there's a lot on it. It's as simple as he was owed $17 million, and the Packers are like, we don't think you're worth $17 million. We've paid you this amount of money the last 2 years, and you've played 7 games, missed 10 games, 10 games. And Jair was like, fine,
and
trade
a
me.
Very vocal guy. Like, they're like, it's probably just not worth it.
And Jair said, fine, trade me. And from what I was reading and hearing today, they tried to trade him at the draft. They tried to trade him so far through the offseason, and no team is like, yeah, we don't want him for $17 million. We'll take him on a flyer for 5 or 6. So the Packers realized, listen, we either pay him the 17 or we just cut him and we move on. And to give themselves credit, they said, listen, we're going to move on. it's a very Green Bay Packers thing to do, to just, business over loyalty in a lot of those ways. It's one of the reasons why the Packers are a better run organization. And we'll see now. Jair thinks he's worth $17 million. Good luck. Go out there, and I think he'll end up with a 1-year kind of prove it deal. And if Jair can play 17 games and be a top 10 corner of the league, I'm sure then the next year, a year from now, he'll get a 2-year, 3-year deal with a little bit more money to kind of wind down his career somewhere. But listen, health availability is the best ability. We say it all the time. And when a guy especially gets older and nicked up at that type of position, that's the NFL for you, man.
That's the end of it.
Yep. You're in one day, you're out the next.
All right, let's talk about our best and worst of the 2025 NFL running backs. Now, of course, as a caveat, this is us projecting who is going to be the starters for these teams. And this is us only factoring in starting running backs. So we're not going to be talking about second and third string running backs because, of course, those would all populate the bottom 5. But instead, we'll talk about the 32 starting running backs, and maybe we'll sprinkle in, like David Montgomery is obviously a starter, even though it's a two-headed system and stuff like that. But you get the point. So, let's start with the top ones, Mark.
So what I loved about this assignment, and one of the things when I brought this idea up to you a couple weeks ago, was like, let's start this for our summer series, is that it forces us to actually look at, like, hey, who are the starting running backs that I'm like, I don't really have faith in. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it forces you to really examine some rosters. So the top was easy to me. The bottom was like, oh, Jesus, that's who their starting running back is? Okay, I got to get that guy in there somewhere. I hadn't even heard of one of the guys. I was like, I never heard of this human being. And he's the starter. All right, so number one, I'm going with Saquon at number one. I think Saquon had just such a special year last year. There's a guy that I have at number two that I maybe just trust more just because I've seen it more consistently, like health, and he's a mauler, and that's Derrick Henry at number two. Oh, to me, those were the clear-cut 1 and 2 for me. But I think Saquon, listen, if he has a year anything close like he did last year, and he proves that he can stay healthy back-to-back, explosive giant years like that, he's starting to really build a Hall of Fame resume. And last year,
I think he's in right now. Personally, I think he is. Remember the 2000 Club?
I know, but it's just tough with the running backs because he's nowhere close to the numbers wise. Like, he really is nowhere close.
Sure, but you factor in, that's where you factor in like pure dominant. Bo
and
Jackson,
you're going to have to with running backs because no one's getting to 12,000, 13,000 yards anymore. It's just not happening.
Yeah, it's not happening.
Except for Derrick Henry, who I have at number 2, and again, like, he was so rejuvenated last year in that first year in Baltimore. I think it's a lot more the same. I don't know if it's as dominant, but I'm going to bet on Derrick Henry until I actually see the wheels fall off. I have him at 2. Number 3 was really interesting. And I started really digging into the stats because I had like 2 names that were just like bubbling up like as just guys. I'm like, I like them a ton. I love their games a ton. And so then I just was like, kind of blown away when I started looking at the stats. And I have Jahmyr Gibbs at number 3. Dan, Jahmyr Gibbs was the only running back last year that had 1,000 yards rushing and 500 yards receiving. He is, to me now, he is the new Alvin Kamara. He is the new Christian McCaffrey. He is the healthy, in his prime version of those guys. And when David Montgomery missed that large chunk of the season, everyone's like, oh, can Jahmyr Gibbs handle the load? The dude he handled the load. And I think he's really bigger, faster, and stronger than you think he is as that receiving threat. He's not the lightning. They are Sonic and Knuckles. Like, he can pack a punch too. I like Jahmyr Gibbs a lot. I have him at 3. Out of respect for him and his health and going into this year, I have Christian McCaffrey at 4. I think if Christian McCaffrey is able to start the season healthy. Remember, at this time last year, it's like, oh, what's going on with his knee? Oh, no, they're just resting him. There's no red flags that I've seen as far as Christian McCaffrey health-wise this year. So I'm gonna give him the respect of putting him in this top 5, and I'll put him at 4. And then at number 5, I think that was a really tough spot. There's a lot of names that popped up, but a guy who consistently has been a top 5 running back for the last 3 years and had a really great season last year in his first year in a new place, and I expect him to have another really great season this year, Josh Jacobs. So I have Josh Jacobs at number 5. Those to me are the guys I think if I had to bet on 5 running backs to have a really great years, those are the 5 I would put the money on. I think the systems they're in, the personnel they're with, and just the historic performance they all have, those are my top 5 running backs in the NFL right now.
Well, I'm glad that we started to divert there towards the end of that list, because I was going to say people are going to stop watching this if we agree all the time. I have the same top 3 as well.
Okay,
Jahmyr
cool.
Gibbs at number 3 was an easy call for me. He was so dominant last year, especially down the stretch, that the final really 8 weeks of the season was next level. He is super talented. I think he's great. We depart in 4 and 5. And I do actually have some strong feelings about one of the guys that you left off the list. Number 4 for me is Bijan Robinson. I think the guy with what he wasn't with what he's had to work with, and still being we're talking about guys stacking the box constantly, and he's still producing at a 4.5 to 5 yards a carry clip, plus having the receiving prowess that he has. He's number 4 for me easily. I would take him over Christian McCaffrey today. I would take him over any of the other guys on this list. And he may, after next year, Derrick Henry probably drops out. Bijan's going to move into the top 3. I think, going into next year, he's that talented. He's like a Saquon Barkley, just a younger version of him. Number 5 for me was a guy who was in a new place, was a guy who dominated, and he's a guy that I actually have underestimated throughout his whole career. And so now I feel like it's my opportunity to give him his flowers. Christian McCaffrey didn't make the top 5 for me. Joe Mixon cracked the top 5 at number 5 there with the Houston Texans. I think he had a really, really good season, despite an underwhelming year overall for the Houston Texans in general. I get your point about Josh Jacobs too, because I think they actually had very similar career arcs, guys that were in positions where maybe they weren't utilized and valued as much while they were at their respective teams. They go to a new location and really have career years. They're both similar in that regard, but I put Joe Mixon because of his receiving capability ahead of Josh Jacobs in that pecking order. So Christian McCaffrey lands at 6 for me, Mark, and then Jacobs would probably be at 7. But Christian, I just couldn't put McCaffrey in the top 5 anymore because of the injuries now that are starting to pile up. The production hasn't necessarily been there. I think he's great. He, is an all-time great talent. But I'd have to see it again. He very well may be a top 5 performing running back this season, but I just couldn't put him there based on what he's coming off of in the 2024 season.
Yeah, so I have Bijan, at my 6, the guys who were in that discussion were Bijan, Bucky Irving. What an incredible rookie season
really good
from him. Cook in Buffalo. I think, again, he's finally come into form, and he looks like he's almost as good as his brother was in his prime. And then
Montgomery's got to be getting there close too, right?
So Montgomery, I did not have in the conversation for 6. I had Jonathan Taylor and Joe Mixon as the other 2. So Jonathan Taylor, I just want to give him a little love. In 14 games last year, because he was injured, he played 3 less games, but he was one of only 3 running backs to average 100 yards per game, and he was one of only 6 running backs to have 300-plus attempts. So he did the 300-plus attempts in 14 games. They lean on him. If he's healthy, he's really, really still a special back. So my problem with McCaffrey, and I'm with you, it's a struggle. The reason I did it is because everything I've read so far is there's no every lingering thing. There's nothing red flags about McCaffrey.
He's ready to go.
Because last year everything was no, he's fine. We're just going to rest him. And there was all this weird, and then all of a sudden it was like, and now he hasn't started for the first 4 games. We're like, what the fuck? He's on IR. And so everything is different. Like, so they're marching to a different tune. And to me, that means he truly is like, they're not protecting him. Like he's in a spot where he feels good. And if he's in a spot where he feels good, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Over the last 5 years, the league leaders with the most rushing yards over the last 5 years, Derrick Henry 1, Jonathan Taylor 2, Josh Jacobs 3. That's where my Josh Jacobs love is. More rushing yards over the last 5 years than Saquon Barkley, than Joe Mixon, then Montgomery, then Aaron Jones, then Kamara, all these guys. He's been extremely consistent as a really, really, really good running back for the last 5 years. And you think about all those guys, Dan, last year, Mixon, Jacobs, Henry, and Saquon, all 4 in new places, all 4 hits, like absolute hits for their team.
Resurrected the running back market in many ways.
So Bijan was really hard for me. My problem with Bijan versus Josh Jacobs, like going in, it was just literally like, okay. And I came out and it was like going into this year, just like my gut reaction is like, again, I have a body of work with Jacobs I just trust. And Bijan, it's still like this, I hate to say it, it's just this like Falcons, like, and Bijan's great because listen, I have more stats, like 16 running backs at 1,000 yards rushing last year. That's up for the first time in like 10 years. So 16 guys over 1,000 yards. The running back's coming back. One running back had the 1,000 rush, 500 yards. That's Gibbs. 6 running backs had this 300 plus attempts. Barkley, Henry, Kyron Williams was another guy.
Yep.
He a little undersized.
He's a top 10.
Yeah, a little undersized, and he had fumble trouble. 5 fumbles. That was tied for second most among running backs. But then Bijan, Taylor, and Jacobs all had over 300 carries. Only 3 running backs average 100 yards per game. That was Barkley, Henry, and Taylor did it. And then 13 running backs had 10 plus rushing touchdowns. 3 guys had 16 rushing touchdowns, tied for the league lead. Henry, Cook, and Gibbs. So Gibbs, not only, again, more love for Gibbs there, not only running back with 1,000 and 500 rushing of receiving, but he was tied for 16 rushing touchdowns. The Lions trusted Gibbs in the red zone, and Gibbs also can break big touchdown runs. I think Gibbs might be number 1 by this time next year when we're redoing this list, depending on the health.
No, it very well could
depending on the health of Saquon and depending on what happens with Ashton Genty, because I think I'm excited to watch Ashton Genty run the ball this year. So Dan, are you ready for my bottom 5?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, so I had to redo my bottom 5. I started with Sharpie. It was a bad idea. I started with Sharpie. I had to redo the list 4 times because the more and more I dug, the more and more I was like, wait a minute. I got to find this guy a spot in here. At number 32, Dallas is starting a guy named Javonte Williams out of North Carolina from 5 years ago.
Yeah, he was the rookie for Denver, and he had some promising
stuff.
Yeah.
But overall, if you look at his overall stats and name recognition, everything, it's not great, especially around that Dallas offensive line that I just don't have a ton of faith in. Yeah. So I have him at 32. This one shocked me a little bit. And again, this is projected starters because he's a guy who signed a big contract 2 years ago or last year. And he had a really solid year 2 years ago, but last year just wasn't there. And I'm hoping that this year is a turnaround year in this new system. Ramondre Stevenson from New England. Dan,
wow.
He was 26th in rushing yards last year as the bell cow back. And he led the league in running back fumbles, 6 fumbles most. And when you watch, I think it was under 4 yards a carry or just close to that, hovering around 4 yards a carry, not explosive. And I was reading some Patriots like Homer blogs on Ramondre. They were very frustrated with him last year. And I'm going to trust that. And I'm going to trust the fact that he was 26 overall in rushing yards, even though as a bell cow back, that's not great. And they leaned on him a lot. He had a lot of attempts because they were trying to help out the rookie quarterback. And so I found Ramondre Stevenson low on this list. Number 30, Brian Robinson Jr. And again, I started going with. Listen,
what? Right. We are gonna have some disagreements.
So I'm gonna give you my thoughts on this. My faith on it is that rookies, I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt, fresh legs.
Why?
In some cases, I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt, fresh legs, lot to prove, versus a guy in Brian Robinson Jr. that had 27th in rushing yards last year, under 3 yards a carry, was good as a receiver in the previous years, but then they bring in Eckler from Washington. Eckler takes all the receiving from Brian Robinson, so he's not a third down back anymore. And so all of a sudden, he kind of falls off the map. And I can't imagine as a guy now going into year 6 is going to just like find it again. You know what I mean? So
I don't know. I think he had a decent season given all things.
Barely 800 yards rushing. I think less than 10 touchdowns. And again,
yeah, but he's in a timeshare. Like he's
in a timeshare where he's not as valuable in that offense with Jane Daniels as like, hey, he's going to move and make things happen. And Eckler was getting a lot of the important downs. And
he also had 4 receiving touchdowns. So he actually had 12 total touchdowns last year.
Okay. So but again, I'm going to play on another year older. And like, I don't expect him to like have a pop. That's where I'm going with this. Again,
all right.
I was surprised by this too.
Hey,
so
here's
some names then. And again, there was some Washington blogs that were like, why didn't we trade Brian Robinson? We need a real star running back. Tyrone Tracy, I would have never known that guy was a starting running back for the Giants. He was 25th in rushing yards last year. He was a converted wide receiver he started his college career as a wide receiver, and the receiving numbers weren't great last year with the Giants. Now, again, that was his rookie year, so maybe there's a pop year. And then my 28th, so it would be my 5th worst starter, is a guy named RJ Harvey. He's a rookie for Denver. And I think it was a 3rd round draft pick or a late 2nd round.
Is he projected to be the starter?
So they just signed. Because
I had Audric Estime and Jaleel McLaughlin listed as their top.
According to ESPN's draft depth chart, RJ Harvey, Denver starting running back, and they just signed J.K. Dobbins today. So my thought is Denver's just got a messy backfield. It's a messy backfield. Now I think there's going to be guys who do good numbers for Denver because I think the offensive line's improved and it's Sean Payton. But I just didn't know what to do with Denver. And ESPN had RJ Harvey, the rookie, listed at the top of the depth chart. So,
okay. All right.
Again, this just goes to show you there's some running back rooms and there's some competitions that are not great. Now, before you give your list, here's some rookies I did have in that 27th. Judakins for Cleveland. Again, I think he's going to be good, but he's competing with Jerome Ford, and I don't love that backfield. And then I would also argue that Pacheco and the backfield in Kansas City is not great. I would argue that Travis Etienne and what's going on in Jacksonville is not great. And Pittsburgh, Jalen Warren. I always put it out there. I always say, hey, I don't love what Pittsburgh's got in the backfield.
Yeah, well, it's not great. That's for sure.
All right, educate.
But I do like the rookie. I do like the rookie Caleb Johnson there in Pittsburgh. But we don't know what to make of it.
I do like
okay, so for me, the starting was and I had to pivot real quick only because I didn't know that RJ Harvey was a projected starter there in Denver, and obviously with J.K. Dobbins that could change things. But I did have Denver's running backs as the 32nd.
Okay, Denver, yeah. Right.
RB situation because Audric Estime, Jaleel McLaughlin, RJ Harvey. I don't have faith really in any of those guys, but RJ Harvey is a rookie. Who knows? He could be really good. But but rookies are really hard to predict. And so you just don't know. And I'm trying to kind of put system aside because their running backs are who they are,
And that's why I had Denver slightly higher, because it's just like someone's going to pop in that offense because it's Peyton, right? Like someone's going to put up good numbers.
Yeah, they'll make them look better than they actually
are. Yeah.
I put Cleveland situation, Quinshawn Judkins, Jerome Ford, Dylan Sampson, any of those guys. I think that's the 31st. Now, Judkins could be really, really good. I mean, he comes in very highly touted, breaks big runs, big guy at Ohio State. Like, he could be really good, but I'm not going to rank rookie running backs unless your name is, of course, Mr. Genty. I'm not going to rank them and predict great outcomes because it's such a volatile position. 3 for me was Dallas with Miles Sanders and Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams probably will be the starter, but I don't like that situation at all. Especially because Javonte actually was set up to succeed in Denver, and he never was able to win any of those battles outright. I mean, they gave him a long leash. They wanted him to be the guy. And then even when Sean Payton comes in, couldn't make it work. Miles Sanders been a journeyman at this point. He's a good fill-in guy when you need a week or two. But that's just a rough situation. Number 4 for me is probably where I'm going to get the most pushback. I put Tony Pollard there. I think he had a disappointing season for Tennessee, a really disappointing year. Now, he ran for 1,000 yards.
Okay.
So you give him that. He reached 1,000 yards. And it was a rough season all around for Tennessee in general, going through a lot of growing pains. But I think there was a lot to be expected out of Tony Pollard and that position. And I don't think he delivered nearly as much. Only 5 rushing touchdowns all year. Yeah. In a situation where it was kind of primed to be the bell cow guy. It just felt very, very meh to me. And I'd rather go with a guy who can get you some of those like really flashy and splash plays that Tony Pollard was known for, but didn't deliver last year. Than a guy, who's going to maybe be slightly more consistent like Tony was, but very average, just very, very average. That one I probably felt the most going out on a limb with, for sure. And the number 5 for me was Jaylen Warren. I like Jaylen Warren a lot, and so I would take him over Tony Pollard personally. He's never been the guy
never been majorly injured.
Yeah, he's never been given that opportunity. I think he's deserving of it. Now, who knows? I don't even think he will get that opportunity this year because I think they like Caleb Johnson that much. But yeah, there's just a lot of question marks there. And so I had to put him there at 5. It was a very interesting list to look at the bottom 5, to be honest. It was really hard to work through.
And so one of the things, again, why Tony Pollard didn't come into my play for my bottom 5. He's certainly like in the 20s. Like I wasn't like always nowhere near it. But my thought was, again, Tony Pollard had more production than I thought he would coming off a devastating injury in what ended up being a disastrous offense for Tennessee. I think Tony Pollard could have a similar 1,000 yards rushing, maybe a little bit more explosive plays now that he's got a real quarterback and they feel a little bit more confident. Because it's like, so again, I'm leaning towards these veterans that it's like, I don't see them having like another, like, I don't see Brian Robinson Jr. having 1,000-yard season this year. I don't see Ramondre Stevenson having 1,000-yard season this year. Tony Pollard, I think it's going to be close. I think like it could because it's like maybe a bounce back. But I agree with you. I think there's this weird thing with the running back position where it's like, I feel this way with DeAndre Swift. Like, I feel like Swift is probably in that like 18, 19, but it's like, well, he's back with a head coach and Ben Johnson, who he had his most productive year with. You know what I mean? So it's maybe and a better offensive line. So it's like, it's hard with some of those veterans who you see their production slipping and they're getting more miles on the tires. And it's like, yeah, I like Judikins a lot. Like, I think I'm with you. It's hard because it's like, it's Cleveland. The offensive line it's not as good as it was a couple of years ago, but their quarterback's going to be such a messy situation. They historically have ran the ball well with Chubb, so maybe Judikins can step in and really just have a really pop year. He's got way fresher legs and a higher upside than Brian Robinson Jr. or insert veteran starter here. And then it's hard because some teams like Washington, I'd argue it's really just a two-headed monster. So I'm throwing Brian Robinson under the bus when it's like the production is really two people, right? And that's kind of how it's going to be for New England this year, it looks like. In Mike Vrabel's offenses historically, they like to run the football, but they like to that kind of 1-2 punch in running the football. So it's hard. I think Dallas is in a bad situation. I agree with you. I think Cleveland's in a tough situation. I agree with you. And I do think for Denver, it's a lot of they got 4 horses in the stable, and Sean Payton will just pick one or two of them, and they'll have solid years. Well. Yeah, they'll have solid years. So we'll see. I do think that Jacksonville, I don't love their situation. Tank Bigsby and NETN. I mean, it's a lot of good luck. Maybe one of them will really win the job and take it. Pacheco got injured and did not come back well from injury, and they're still riding with Kareem Hunt. It's a Kareem Hunt Pacheco. That running back room looks really shaky to me right now. Not great. I don't know if Kansas City drafted someone and maybe Andy Reid's got another 7th rounder like he did with Pacheco 3 years ago, and someone's going to have a pop year. I don't know. I agree with you. Jaylen Warren in Pittsburgh. It just feels weird. Pittsburgh, from Le'Veon Bell to these big name running backs, to Najee Harris, where it's and now it's Jaylen Warren. And so it doesn't feel like it's got the marquee that it should for Pittsburgh.
Yeah. But they'll go with a 1-2 punch type of thing, like a diet version of the Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery situation. But I think Jaylen Warren's super underrated. I still have him as bottom 5, but he's a starting capable NFL running back, and so I'm actually excited to see
this. Is one of those. This is one of those where I'm I'm going to pose it to any of our dedicated viewers and listeners out there. If you think we're really missing one, let us know. Because again, I'm willing to say oh no, yeah, I totally whiffed. You're right. This running back room's not good. The Giants, I think you whiffed there. I think they belong in there. I mean, let's be honest.
Tyrone Trace, I thought he had a good year. I thought he was a surprising, talented player who could break off big runs at times. I don't know. I mean, I thought he's pretty good.
I mean, again, it's I trust their offensive line. I think they could be looking at quarterback changes and coaching. I think it could be just a messy year. And I just think we'll see.
See, that's more situation based. I guess I kind of approached this one thinking
would I
take this player over this player, But I mean, that's fair. I mean, it's
I'm not taking Javonte Williams. I'm not taking Javonte Williams.
No.
Dallas, I don't know what Dallas is going to do here. This is not good.
Well, this is a fun one. We'll probably come at you with wide receivers or something next week, which will be another interesting list.
That's going to be hard because I think there are
because we can't include T. Higgins then, right? We're not.
No. It's your number one guy. It's your X receiver, and I think it's fun because there are some teams with really good cores, but it's who's the one? Green Bay.
Green Bay.
How do you
Bay's
not
the poster child for this?
There's a lot of talent, but who's the guy? Who's the one? And if that's your one, that's a tough look at a number one receiver.
For sure. Yeah, no. So that'll be an interesting one. I'm excited to dive into that list and bring some more news your way next week with mini camp underway and all of that fun stuff. Aaron Rodgers is a Steeler. We are off and running, but that will do it for us here on the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan. Check us out at FB Lounge.